dear colleagues and my dear friends. Welcome to another new episode of the Quest for Excellence series, Season 2, brought to you by Intellectus Consulting. Friends, we have had so far episodes in Season 2 which have featured interactions with business leaders across various organizations who have distinguished themselves in domains such as brand building excellence, marketing excellence, commercial excellence, strategy excellence, as well as leadership excellence. As you all know, the Quest for Excellence series is our humble endeavor to promote and raise the standards of marketing excellence in our industry. And in this endeavor, we aspire to invite business leaders who have excelled themselves in the various fields that I just mentioned and share their life experiences and journey with us. In this process, their journey has been filled with a lot of learnings for us in how to shape our careers when building them out, either in the functions of brand management, marketing, even strategy, or commercial excellence. My guest for today is such individual who has been at the forefront of driving excellence, not only in brand building, but also in digital transformation in the pharmaceutical industry. Friends, my guest for today is Mr. Pawan Kulkarni, who is the General Manager for Corporate Marketing, New Products Introduction, Marketing Excellence, and Digital Transformation for JB Chemicals Limited. Pawan is very well known in the industry as being a passionate advocate for digital transformation agenda and has been very vocal in various industry fora of why it makes so much sense to drive digital transformation agenda in the COVID era. Pawan comes with an experience of more than 2 decades, having started his career in sales with Wockhardt and also spending a year plus in the service side of the industry in advertising with an agency called Oxygen Advertising in Bombay. Subsequently, he joined the pharma industry formally in the brand management function, having worked with organizations such as Genberg Pharmaceuticals, Elder, and Alchem for over a decade, rising through the various roles and responsibilities of brand management. In this decade, he was instrumental in building large brands and portfolios for companies such as Elder, especially the Shelcal brand. And we will hear some work around the Shelcal brand today from Pawan. After his stint with Elder, he then moved to JB Chemicals and has been with JB for the past 10 years. He initially joined them as the general manager for marketing, and now he has been driving the corporate strategy, new products excellence introductions, as well as digital transformation. I want to just start off by, first of all, welcoming you to our, series as our esteemed guest, because I was planning this to have you on our show for a while now, and thanks for accepting our invitation. It's a pleasure to have you. And you have been one of the strong advocates of digital transformation in pharma, which makes it all the more interesting. I want to hear your thoughts around the same, And I propose to have a very easy flowing conversation with you because you as a person, whatever little bit I know or have known of you, is one person who's very comfortable having those easy flowing conversations.
Yes.
Yeah. So thanks once again. So my first question I want to start off with, Pawan, is your career has been a mix of actually sales, advertising, agency experience before getting into full-time brand management in the pharma industry across various roles, product manager, GPM, which is typical vertical growth. And now you have evolved into driving corporate strategy, marketing excellence, new product introductions, and digital. So in this 2 decades career, I'm sure you would have had a lot of learnings along the way, and each of these pieces of sales, marketing, and now what you do in general management. So I just thought of asking you the first question. How do you see this career evolution of yours? Would you like to share some learnings with to start off with, in this journey with our audience is what I thought of asking you. Yeah.
In fact, first of all, let me first thank you for having me here. It is a great pleasure being, and you selected me out of all so many stalwarts there. I'm just one small one, still trying to learn. And it's been a mixed bag of experience since I started as a medical rep. And naturally, let me be very honest, I am not somebody who came in pharma by choice. It was because of by chance I had gotten. But having said this, somewhere that advertising, that bug or advertising kida is still there with me. I always think in that. So that element of being as a brand manager or fascination towards a copy or a photograph or how overall what you call the hoarding or advertising. I still am fascinated to see what is a. I still get a personal guess. I always see what can be the tomorrow's front page ad, and also these are some things which have been fascinating to me. Starting with Wokhad, if you ask me, that was a very interesting. I mean, I have been lucky throughout to have been working with one of the best people, and lucky to have had one of the best bosses who actually trained me and helped me understand what are my shortcomings and which areas I should polish and which areas to let go. That is the main thing which I have learned from my bosses. And in Wokhad, it was a very short time, but in a very short time, I could be the all India sales, number one in terms of multiple products. And we used to sell those Dexolac powder. And in the first job itself, as a medical representative in Wokhad, it was a product which you can't sample, which you can't give a literature, which you can't even give a small pen with a brand name written on it. You can't give any kind of promotional inputs with a brand name on it. So everything was, one to one. What way you as a person can convince and make yourself. So that was a first hit learning, wherein it was like you sell yourself first because you can't leave behind a so-called what we call as a typical leave behind. We didn't have any opportunity. I mean, neither the company, neither because it was a law and company used to follow, and we never used to get those materials. The second part, which was a learning as a medical rep in that time, was in the first job itself, I could learn about the surrogate marketing. You can't directly give a literature with a brand name because it was a rule. I mean, mother's milk is the best, so infant milk substitute, Dexolac and all can't be promoted. So the surrogate elements were picked up when I was a medical rep. So I started getting interested into surrogate marketing and all stuff like that. Elementary wise, in terms, it was a mix, a good experience, though it was a short stint, but I could achieve more because it was a mix not only of doctors and chemists, but it was also activities for paramedics. I mean, today, if you are arranging a paramedic seminar or anything, it is very easy. You can arrange on a laptop or anything. In those days, there was no laptop, nothing. Neither many of the hospitals ever had TVs. So we used to, I used to go to the local video shop, hire a TV, a VCR, and then the company used to give cassettes, arrange them and then train the paramedics. So these were the kind of learnings in a very short span of time I used to do. I think in, 4 or 5 months, I still remember I had done more than 30, 35 seminars. I mean, training the paramedics because these were the infant milk substitute wherein we were taught that after the delivery, the mother is more commonly asking the queries to a paramedic. So I understood it is not just the doctor as a customer, but it is also the paramedic. So not only one customer, it can be multiple customers for a product. So these were the kind of understanding that happened. So that was how initially was, and that was where I learned about bottom line surrogate marketing in terms of not one customer, and there are multiple challenges. When you have challenges, whatever kind, I still carry those learnings whenever I have some kind of a challenge here. So I always correlate ki, had it been there, what would we have done, because I've lived that. So
Awesome. Yeah. So one was surrogate marketing, one was multiple stakeholder management, not just the doctor, but also the other stakeholders, etc. And also, how do you manage despite constraints, right? Excellent.
yeah.
So you also decided to have a brief stint in the advertising agency space, because you mentioned at the outset you were very much drawn towards the advertising, the billboards and the hoardings, etc. So
I'm still.
And you're still, yeah, all of us are. Yeah. So how do you see the advertising then, Pawan, when 90s, when we all, started our careers around the same time, and today's advertising, any basic differences from the agency side? Do you see any of those differences?
No, two things. One, you made me look either too old or too young, because I started in
So you are very young.
not in 90s, but in 2000.
2000. Yeah. Okay, I'm from the 90s batch. Okay.
I think that was something when India may pharma advertising. There was no pharma MBA, nothing at that time. So it was just one MBA, and pharma advertising was budding up. And I think I was with Ashok Jain as my boss, and that was probably one of the earliest agencies who started setting up this concept. And we used to have pitching to the pharma companies, and in then I still remember many of the times I have worked with almost top 25 companies, including brands like Metikova launch, the visual aid that made with the light, the optic fibers, visual aid. And I even did some of the very wacky visual aids I have done. I always challenge myself: can there be a visual aid which is not a paper or your iPad? There are many examples who have done very well. I mean, I remember somebody did a visual aid with a chessboard, explaining the mode of action. So that was something which was very interesting in terms of bringing out new things. So advertising was something when I was a medical literature or a visual aid and all. When I entered advertising, Ashok Jain brought in stuffs with FMCG culture. And I think probably we were that time, our agency was the first agency in the pharma who started the concept of audiovisual launch. Audiovisual launch was not existing. That time, even the audiovisual, the way things are advanced now with a lot of softwares and all coming in, that time used to be a separate flash file and a separate PowerPoint and then mix it. So that is how it used to be done. And it was pretty expensive when a small AV, which can now be made at a 25,000, that time it used to cost us around 3 to 4 lakhs.
Wow.
And the concept of teasers, teaser launch, I think probably it was our agency who started in 2000. Many of these big companies were fascinated, what is a teaser? Or else typically, I think it better. A launch means going to a doctor, visual aid and all, and that used to be the kind of stuff. At the same time, it was a very good, interesting experience, though it was also again a short time, but I could work with almost like all top 25 companies, including today's top, and many of them who are not in top right now. But in those days, I have worked with these companies. But very fascinatingly, the learning which was from aspect which I still remember, I still taunt many people. We used to have a brief sheet, which is a typical brief sheet of FMCG. I mean, if you work in FMCG, this thing, the agency, before coming in for a pitch presentation, they normally take a brief sheet, and FMCG, brief sheet runs in dozens of pages, because there are multiple stakeholders, what insights, whatever the back end research and all which is done. But normally in pharma in India, it is a back end research is very limited. Back-end research is very limited, and whatever 10 doctors, 15 doctors we used to meet, and that used to be the research and fill up. I still remember, I don't want to name the company, one of the best companies and so-called MNCs or whatever. Many of the times we used to go there and they used to have a query. If you guys do all this, what will PMT do? That is a kind. So PMT has a different role in understanding insights, their handling of the brand, their regional campaigns, multiple things are there. So even then and now, quite a lot of similarity which we have in terms of having PMT doing a typical routine job. I don't know, still multiple people spend time in terms of routine things which has no productive outcome. So I think that used to be the same thing even then as well. And very interestingly, I have had faced a lot of challenges when I used to go to a general manager of a pharma company. He used to hand me a 20-page literature asking, "Iska kuch banao," and there's no body, no tail, nothing. I mean, iska kuch banao. Now that 20-page literature from some journal, I had to go through and understand what exactly is a requirement of the brand and where they are positioning. Then used to come to the questions and all. And multiple times it also happened that you know. A brief sheet. We had done a brief sheet of around 2 or 3 pages. Now, those 2 or 3 pages also, multiple the marketing managers were not able to fill within a short span of time. They used to take a week's time to fill that because it had all basic. What is the objective of the brand? What is the persona of the brand? Where do you want to position it? I mean, who are your direct competition, indirect competition? So multiple things. So they used to take almost a long time. So that is where a kickoff for me to these are the important elements. As a brand manager, we should learn. That was how it built up. So we have worked with, I think, I personally work with brands like Lactodex of Raptocos. It was the design and the special bond as a campaign. I still remember I worked with Methikoval launch of Wokhart, not when I was in Wokhart, but when I was in the agency. So these were the things. I mean, that is very interesting in terms. Having said this, and today so many agencies have cropped up, and at least pharma is accepting the part by parcel of it as a part of industry.
Pawan, you raised a very important question, and actually, I want to spend a couple of more minutes on that to pick your. You have been fortunate to be a part of the agency side, and you so beautifully raised two challenges when you were in the agency side. One, the formal methodology of client briefing the agency in terms of what is expected from the brand, the campaign, etc., was non-existent. I mean, people were struggling to or articulate. I can tell you that exists even today.
Absolutely.
So even today, if you see the industry, it has not really moved. Brand managers still don't think it is important to brief agencies, and they just hand over some paper and they say iska kuch banao. Just what happened 20 years ago with the gentleman saying 20 pages ka aap kuch banao. The second important thing is the importance of agency briefing is because agencies are not just the vendors or agencies, but they are partners in building your brand.
Absolutely.
At one level. Pawan, you're driving in a senior leadership role right now in JB. My question is, why is this still a problem? I mean, do you have any insights on this? Why is it that brand managers don't consider this despite being coached, despite being told? Why is it they don't understand this, that it is important? The execution is important, Baba. Jo head office mein hai, you have to translate it into the agency to the. Why is that important not being? Any thoughts around that? Because our audience is all brand managers and GPMs, etc. This coming from you will be very important. Any thoughts? Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting question, but tough to answer. But let me put the perspective of what I look at it. Let me put it this way. Brand managers, what is the job of a brand manager? He should have a customer insight. He should know how the customer thinks. He should know what is a customer pain point. What is, and in our, unlike FMCG, end user is your direct customer.
Yeah.
Uh, for a pharma, it is a deciding factor is your doctor, and then the end user is somebody else, whom
Yes.
many of the times you don't see them.
See them. Yes.
So there is a gap over there. So what is a pain point up till the doctor? What is a presentation of the patient, and what is a journey which a patient goes through? So the fascinating point here, which I feel is lacking, is majority of the brand managers don't understand or try to understand the patient journey. Once the patient journey is understood, a lot of things will fall in place. कि क्या करना है, क्या नहीं करना है. And brand managers should know more of what not to be done and rather than what is to be done.
Right.
And when that gap is filled, instead of churning out, I still keep pulling many of my old students who keep coming, discussing on Saturday, and we have groups, and we discuss on that, many of the times. So majority of these brand managers are running around what his boss wants. The real boss of the brand manager is his brand, not his human boss. First, understand what a brand wants. What are the pain points? You come back, give the insights, get the right, interpretations of those insights, and show it to your boss. Your boss will be convinced. If your boss is not convinced that you don't have the depth, then you'll end up doing too many things which your boss wants, and you don't know why you are doing it because boss ne bola. And this
Correct.
is a
Very good.
commonest problem with all of them. Second, I always say two sets of people are very difficult to teach. The first set is the kindergarten, and the second set is the MBAs. So you can't teach these two people, including me. Many of the times I also try to I'm a typical this thing कि जब तक मैं मुंह के बल नहीं करता मैं सीखता नहीं. So I keep reading, I keep falling on my face, and then I learn. Third most important point, which all the brand managers should understand, is when agencies come to you, just like you have connects with your friends in other companies or other this thing, agencies boss have a much better network than yours. When anything happens in front of one agency, it keeps on circulating and they laugh at the back. And I know I have been in both the sides of the table. I have one of the best friends in one of the top agencies, or even the startup agencies. Many of my friends have started agencies. So at a Saturday evening party, many of the brand managers become laughing stock. This is a fact. And the same, happens. So when you're briefing to the agency, it should be very crystal clear. I remember a couple of days back, one of the vendors, agency person called me. He was, I don't want to name the company. He was telling about one of the companies, pharma company itself. Pawan, out of so many years of experience, I got one mail of 4 lines or 5 lines paragraph and 6 or 7 bullet points. All I had to do is forward the mail to the tech team and to the digital team or the creative team. Every single thing was crisply bulleted in those kya karna hai, kya nahi karna hai. That was crystal clear. And so all other companies keep having ye karna hai, wo karna hai, then they change it, and there is multiple changes happening. So this is something which is a brand manager needs to understand when you are briefing an agency what you want them to do, what is expected out of it. And many of the times I have seen even them, and even now I keep getting feelers or feedbacks from people that जो काम brand manager को करना चाहिए वो agency कर रहा है. Like, talk to 20 customers. Talking to 20 customers is a brand manager's job, boss. It's not an agency's job. Or agency can just bring 5 doctors feedback. You have to talk to 20 customers. You have to understand the journey. You have to map the journey. You have to tell as a brand manager to the agency, these are the whole journey. And these are the points where we can bring our brand. And how to bring that brand, what to be done, then discuss with the agency. So that is how the clarity should be with the agency. Everything leaving it to let me be very blunt in this. There are many brand managers and some departments or companies today. If there is some rule today coming in that pharma companies can't use agencies, these set of people will lose their job. They don't know what to be done. They are so agency dependent. Everything is done. What you are doing? What is your thought process? Everything should be your agencies for implementation. So this is something which, I observe, when even interviewing people, they keep telling, "Maine ye kiya, I did this, I did that." My simple question, which part is done by agency and which was the strategic element your boss told? Then you tell what you did. So a brand manager's role technically is much important than the vice president's role. A brand manager, I feel, should know much more than the vice president knows. In fact, the brand manager should go and tell the vice president, these are the things, but it happens ulta.
Yes.
SBU head is knowing much more than the brand manager.
Right.
SBU head will be the happiest person if his brand managers know much better than him.
Exactly.
Any day.
Exactly. Yes. No, I think you have put it brilliantly, Pawan. You have been blunt and you have been forthright, and that is what we expect our guests to be on our show, because it is for the benefit of the audience, for their own betterment. Right?
Absolutely.
No, thanks so much. I think you have raised some fantastic points. One is the clarity of the role and responsibilities between your own self as a brand manager and that of an advertising agency. So you don't interchange your roles or you don't duplicate the roles. Very beautifully. Second, I think very good point is, please have a clear understanding of what you want from the brand, what you expect from the brand. And very well said, Pawan. You should have clarity of what you want to do with your brand and also what you don't want to do with your brand, which I got. Because you have the clarity to end up doing 20,000 different activities like a game of darts. Ye nahi hua to wo laga, ye nahi. So basically, as we call it in our chaste Hindi, tukkabazi, basically is that. And I have seen that it's an endemic problem. Third, I think is very important is the role of the leadership as the BU head, etc., in driving this formalization process to down the line, so that people understand what is expected of them. And you touched upon, if you know the patient journey, you very clearly understand what are the points of intervention and how you will brief the agency accordingly. No, Pawan, thank you very much for articulating. I wanted this message to come through very strongly, and I really thank you for that. That's good. I want to touch upon another issue, which I think, you have had a very strong stint in brand building in the industry, having worked for companies like Elder, Alchem, Genberg, etc., and now even driving marketing in JV. Today's, when you look back at your starting point, when you entered pharma, and now brand building as a function, strategic function, how has it been in this journey of a decade plus? What's your personal observations, not just from brand management, but also the journey? Enough thought and seriousness is being applied, or do you think much more can be done? What would you love to see, from your personal experience? I just thought of asking that. Yeah.
Okay. Very, very broad question. Let me try to concise it to a perspective. See, brand management per se, if you see the traditional way, David Acker has put it very strongly. The question of how the word brand came. Brand came from the word of a Latin or some European old language called as brander. Brander means burning. In earlier days, cattle and their sheep and all were burnt just to market that this is mine and this is how old the branding is. So rest all is the same. Now, when you come across as a brand, for me, the perspective is brand never sells. The story sells. It is always the story that sells. So I am a very big fan of how you narrate the story, how you tell the story. It might be the same thing. The same question comes in terms of cup syrup. It comes in multiple molecules. Where in India is a place where one molecule has 50 different brands. And if you take a iron brand, there are 800 brands. If you take a calcium brand, there are more than 750 brands. But if you see these big markets, wherein hundreds of brands are there and some people are isolating themselves in certain areas, they are doing good and all, and they are happy. But if you see these kind of markets where thousands of brands for one molecule exist, it is normally one, two, or three brands, the top brands, who has the lion's share. Why is that? The narrative with these companies are very strong. I still remember in Shellcal, I was a part of team with handling Shellcal. And for almost 6 years, one thing didn't change. And that was a punchline of Shellcal. Now, let us think in terms of other brands. Every review meeting or every quarter meeting, the visual aid changes, the copy changes, the punchline changes, a new brand manager comes and he wants to change the logo because the new brand manager wants to announce the arrival. A new SBU head comes. Naturally, it is a human tendency that blame the earlier person कि ये पहले यहाँ नहीं होता था, हमने चालू किया. This is a typical tendency we all have. It's a human this thing. But if you understand from the perspective of the brand, I feel that a brand manager, before giving, a brand manager himself, a marketer himself, should meet at least 50 non-prescribers and 50 prescribers before even touching the brand file. You go in the field, meet non-prescribers 50 people, meet prescribers 50 people. You'll understand the whole brand plan, kahan gap aa raha hai. If you come and start with sales data, ye idhar bikta hai, ye number one seller, and typically induction happens, he is a number one seller, you should talk to him. He is, yahan pe already, before even he joins or he has seen the face of this thing, somebody in the office will tell that the sales is very low in this thing, and he has made a negative impression about that state or that person in the brand message. Don't do that. So there are multiple things which are there, which I feel that we have accepted as a obvious things, whether result is there or no, have to be done. So this is a gap.
This is a gap. Pawan, would it be fair to say, of course, I don't want to be unfair to anyone but this is a trend also I've seen is our brand managers in the industry very often love to be in the activity trap. Promotional activities, campaigns. They want to be busy churning out a lot of tactical stuff all the time, to keep themselves busy, customers engaged, field force engaged, and they go by what the field force is telling them. So indirectly, the field force is directing the brand management rather than the manager himself.
Absolutely.
Your position on this. This is a real problem.
Let me not blame brand manager as such across. There are some of the brand managers I have worked with. They are very brilliant. They know मुझे यही करना है, इतना ही करना है. I don't want to do too many things. I want to do one thing, but 100 times the same thing. These people are more clear people.
Right.
Second, my boss had given this term, what he meant. MAFA. Mr. Sabyasachi always gives this term MAFA when somebody comes to give an activity. So it's called as mistaken action for an activity. Right. So something is happening, and at the end of the day, jungle mein mor nacha kisne dekha. But at the feeling of a brand manager, मैंने तो ये कर लिया, resume में भर दिया, मैंने ये literature बनाया, इसमें अच्छा photo डाला था, photo खरीदा, unnecessary things is this thing. Another biggest point is, especially for the young brand managers, let me tell you, if you want to note this, all of you can note it. Your literature, your incentive, your inputs, pen or tabletop items, your CMEs or whatever activities you do, these are not strategy. This is not a strategy. This is implementation of something to achieve that strategy. Now, if for example, if I'm selling a pen, what for the benefit of young brand managers I'm selling, if I'm selling a pen, what is a strategy? I mean, I'll pack it nicely, I'll advertise, I'll hire Amitabh Bachchan to say that I sign with my all film contracts with this. All these are implementation. But if your strategy, what is the example? What is a strategy? Strategy is something you want to convert all the pencil users to this pen. Then that becomes a strategy. That itself is one strategy. That's it. Now you decide how will you convert that pencil users to pen, their activities. So what you said, Shailesh, multiple people get engrossed in multiple activities multiple times, and they think that strategy is happening or something is happening. Uh, in actual, nothing is happening. Two ways to check it. One, when your medical rep leaves, one of your medical rep leaves, go to his house, you take over all the inputs, remaining inputs. You will get to know what is the amount of strategy, of your strategy he has implemented. One. Second, when, catching up an insight with medical reps, you randomly call up a medical rep or a area manager, ask him to tell you on phone about that product. Randomly, anybody. If that is done, you have been successful. A random discount. It doesn't happen. It has to be consistent. I remember my first boss used to tell me, if you are going for a training program or as a brand manager, you ensure that every single medical rep speaks like you, and you speak in the most simplest way. Don't complicate things. You speak to them in the most simplest way in the cycle meeting. Whatever 1, 2, or 3 points you are speaking, that should be the outcome in front of the doctor. And that is a very basic, and these are very basic points. Unnecessary multiple times reading jargons and so-called literatures or books and all, people get confused.
Right. It's very strange, but it's also very gratifying to see you speak like this, because the next question that I was about to ask is, and which comes naturally, is you hit upon one core skill that is in the beginning of our conversation on agency briefing. There is a big gap there. The second big gap is field force briefing. When we go for cycle meetings, we consider it as a routine chore or an activity of briefing the field goers with our strategy, quarter cycle meeting में इतना slides बनाना है, 250 slides, IQ via AVAX data, CMAR prescription audit, followed by the strategy and And the guy, poor fellow sitting at the other side, is completely bored to death because he's seeing 300 slides per brand or 100 slides per brand, and that's it. The ability to be sharp and focused and just tell him what is necessary and keeping it simple, is so very straightforward, but yet difficult to implement. Because that is the time when you're actually giving life to your strategy execution in the cycle meeting. But most of the brand managers see it as a routine thing to be done once in 4 months. What's your take on that, Pawan? I see you smiling, but yes, it is very important. Is it because it's all about basics, Naya? So I thought I must spend time here. Yeah,
I'll tell you very honestly. I consider myself as also one of those fools at one point of time when I did this thing. But fortunately, when I started as a brand manager, we didn't have laptops or computers.
Right.
All we had was OHP sheets.
Right. Same.
Yeah, and that is how I learned making a launch. Or launch mein wo jo, that 35
mm wala slide aata tha.
And that click and all.
Yes.
So there is no animation. There is no this thing. One slide comes. So and that 35 slide used to have around 25-30 sliders. So I have done launches on 25 slides.
Right.
I have done cycle meetings of multiple products on OHP sheets.
Right.
So, OHP sheets we used to do on a computer, everything. We didn't have laptops. So that printout has to be taken on a OHP. So we didn't have time or energy to do that multiple slides, those days. So our cycle meeting slides per brand used to remain for 12 or 15 slides max. 15, my boss used to tell me 15 slides means you don't know what you are going to talk.
Exactly.
We were just making it. And some initially, fascinated with, all those possibilities on PowerPoint. And then we started learning about making graphs and all, which we used to be very tough on making an actual graph sheet and all. So ended up making complicated this thing. when my boss started, that was one, he always used to taunt us or me. जो बोलना है एक लाइन में बोलो, खत्म करो. So then that graph started vanishing. Only one point, or even if there is a complex chart, mark it, speak about that. Thus, why you are showing the slide? I would suggest, I would blame PowerPoint for this. And I would blame more the fascination for of the brand managers towards the PowerPoint, and every upgrade of a PowerPoint, you get all animation, this thing and all. One star is coming from here, one slide is coming from here, and they think that this is jazzy. At the end of the day, I'll tell you, even best of the companies, best of the brand managers, you have PowerPoint, you don't have neither power, neither point in that. So that is how cycle meeting happens. And most of the times you go in any company, the moment cycle meeting starts, the dates are released, the biggest time, the largest amount of time and the most amount of time is spent on how the design of the backdrop should, how the design of the lighting, how to do all those entry, exit, giving a rose garland and t-shirt and collecting the t-shirt sizes. These things more rather than the content on the slide के आगे जाके उसको डॉक्टर के सामने उगलना क्या है. I mean, let me be very blunt. Even I have been the part of it. I also do. Many of the times I do. But many people might not be happy with my point. But I think many SBU heads might be agreeing with me. But the point is, you spend more time in reducing the number of cycles. I mean, the slides on the cycle. Out of that, I still remember in my earlier company in Jenberg, the practice was given to us that my boss never allowed any of the brand managers to go in the cycle meeting till the time we presented him. You first present in front of me.
Yes.
I'll ask you some questions. Then you will be going. So without that complete mock wherein one brand manager was made to ask, even the same thing was in Elder. Handling shell cal. Shell cal is a calcium. People think that calcium apne aap dikhta hai shell cal. But there are so much of studies, in-depth analysis, everything being done, why we are doing this, how we are doing this. And more important, slides should have not on what we want to do with that brand. We should have more on why we are doing this.
Right.
Your medical rep is not a fool. If you are asking him to go and do this, you tell him why you should do this. He might do it much better.
Yes.
So that connect of a brand manager with the the medical rep, that is more important.
Yes.
This is where the gap I feel is. It's still tough, even tough for me at times because we get taken away by the flow.
Yeah, no, very beautifully put, Pawan. I think, people watching this episode would think, it's very elementary, basic, kya bol raha hai, don't know why are they spending time. But God lies actually in the elementary details. And that's where we are seeing continuously for years together problems in these details, which is impacting brand performance at one level or the other. And, the point that you mentioned is so valid, both in terms of the agency briefing requirement, responsibility, and now the sales force briefing, because both these are very critical aspects of delivery on the strategy. And I remember when I was fortunate to work under bosses who were very tough and demanding, just like you, who said that, Shailesh, if you can't tell your story in 4 slides, don't waste my time. Maximum 4 slides.
Absolutely.
Don't know what to say. So even 400 slides won't help. Just tell. And some would say, this is a BEST bus ticket, like how we are from Mumbai, right? If you can't tell the story behind that BEST bus, then everything else is secondary.
That's a beauty of those those times when we didn't have a laptop, Google.
Absolutely.
Today, if even I would suggest even my friends, my team, or brand managers in my company, if you want to write a copy, don't open your laptop, don't open your Google, don't see the company ads. You just take a blank sheet of paper, take a pencil, pen, sketch pen, whatever you want to, just start writing. That is the best way of writing a copy.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Pawan. I think, again, the third point, a skill which is very important as a competence. I mean, it's a default competence. is copywriting. Not much thought, because they think it is the agency's job. It's not the agency's job. Agency's job is to give life to that copy. But who knows better what copy and what communication to be given to customer than the brand manager itself? I think Pawan, thanks for this first half of the conversation, which has been really blunt, which is great to hear. Hard hitting, but also
I know many people are going to hate me for this, but
no, many people would have
I am in favor of those. I am in favor of those, and I appreciate those brand managers who have been in touch and who knows and follows these aspects.
Yeah. No, people who worked with me, under me for all these years, now that I'm out of the industry, would still wonder and smile and say, thank God we had this man as a tough boss, because we are slightly better off today. Anyway, Paul, I want to come to the second part of our conversation, that's on digital, because that's something. So my first question is, how did the digital bug bite you? And when did it bite you? And why do you think it's so important to stay current on digital? I thought of just
digital bug. I think digital bug has bitten everyone. Yeah. If you are using a smartphone, you are a digital. So if you are on Facebook, you are on digital. If you are on Twitter or whatever this thing, that again depends on that cognitive dissonance adaptation process. People are more well versed with Facebook. The younger crowd is more with Instagram, and very few are on Twitter. Technically speaking, how it happened, it was over a period of time when this digital trend started. Not just because of COVID, but even before. I started seeing many of the doctors expressing themselves, on the Facebook and all, even before Instagram came. Many of the doctors are also a good influencers, and they follow and all. So doctors also started coming up and sharing their cases, sharing their advice to the patients and all. So that is something which I think everyone knows. I mean, there is nothing hidden. And this digital is something which came up very strongly as a hand, as a savior during COVID. Because what happened, I think we all know, in COVID, 40-50 years of practice suddenly collapsed. Meeting the doctor, nobody wanted to meet nobody. Neither MR to doctor to patient to doctor. So all these triangles were disconnected. So whatever remaining was, in fact, I have written it multiple times in my articles and all. The point is, digital is here to stay. It is going to be there whether pharma adapts it or not. I was reading, I was working on another article. I was trying to search out, there was a rough data which was published in 1970s in the US market. In those days, in that article, it said that every day a US citizen in 1970s was exposed to almost 600 to 700 brands in a day, in a day's time. Now, the same thing, there is no data available here, but a rough estimate is from getting up in the morning till the evening, we sleep at night. Start with your toothpaste, your soap, your dresses, your shoes, socks, going to office, seeing hoardings. I think we are exposed somewhere between 6,000 to 7,000 brands, consciously or subconsciously. The same as with doctors, and probably a little bit more of pharma brands because they meet a medical rep. Another aspect here is in terms of digital, what there's overcrowding of content. I always say, doctors want to consume good content, not go down of content. So give them a good content, give patients good content, give in a very different way. One of the doctor during COVID, who was my very close friend, he used to be my roommate during my MBAs, and he was doing MBBS. He called me up saying that, "Kya tum log kya kar rahe ho?" I mean, anything foolish any pharma company does, he blames me. So he calls me and says, "Tum log pagal ho." So he called up and say, "ये कौन सा डिजिटल है तुम लोगों का?" डिजिटल के नाम पे मेरा नाम, फोन नंबर, एक्सेप्टेंस वगैरह लिखवा दिया और 15 पेज का मुझे एक आयरन ब्रांड पे लिटरेचर भेजा है, PDF literature of 15 pages. Why would I read a 15-page literature or iron? So this happens, and this is just one of the example, and this every doctor was disturbed, and there are many contents which doctors really love, really interested, and trend will increase. Earlier there was no budget in terms. I think very technically, even in FMCG, there are around 20 to 25% of budgets going to digital. Today, even if you do a Zoom webinar, that is also digital. How will you transform, in terms of digital aspect, whether a company does it or no, your behavior of doctor is going digital. So are you in line? आप करो नहीं करो, डॉक्टर तो अपने आप डिजिटल जा रहा है. So you have to find loopholes and points where you can intervene without intruding his privacy. Now, I had written one article in Economic Times by name RICE. Reach, impression, clicks, and engagement. Now, typically, pharma has a tendency of two parameters. One is prescription and sales. Now, many of audience might think that हम digital में कुछ करते हैं तो उसका outcome क्या है? So my question to all of them, आपने 2 लाख literature भेजा, उन 2 लाख का outcome क्या है? Can you measure that outcome of those 500 samples every month you send, or 150 samples every month, literature you send? What is the outcome of that? So you don't know which part. Very good old saying by David Ogilvy. You don't know which half of the budget goes waste. Whether this 50 or that 50, but you have to 50% of the budget goes waste. Which 50% you don't know. So digital is also evolving. I think this is something where reach, impression, clicks may not do your direct sales. I always take this very good learning from this advertising case. There is a point of 7. The importance of 7. Like I always give this example, which I think everyone can correlate, is of cars. If you see any car launch, you see that on the front page of the newspaper today. You see that as a news, as a PR article. You see that on a YouTube when you go search something, Zabardasti, that forced ad is coming. You go out, you see a hoarding, right? You see this in the next 3-4 days, 7 to 8 times, and that is a beauty. If a brand is not seen 7 to 8 times at a back-to-back stretch, it is not registered, and that is how FMCG works. That is how most of their brands have that frequency of investment. They invest completely initially and then low down their budget, and then comes as the customer acquisition activities. So how to give that experience? First is a publicity and then advertising. So publicity and advertising are two different things. So you should start with publicity and then advertising. So when you are launching a brand, today you are outreaching with digital. Today even a pharma brand is being launched. And you have the opportunity of publicity. Don't wait for the stocks to come, bill, and then we'll do a dhamaka. No, it can start with early. And those 7.7 times you can hit even before that is where the teaser starts, and very engaging, simple teasers without intruding the doctors. So that can be possible. So multiple things. So digital has opened a lot of platter, but at the same time, I also, let me be a devil's advocate. Not all brands require digital. Not all digital is required for every brand. So ऐसा नहीं है कि digital है कि सब brand में ये भी करना है, ये भी करना है, ये भी करना है. No. You first decide on, see, digital marketing doesn't exist. It is marketing in the digital world.
Yes.
Marketing remains same. So you decide first what is your brand requirement. If digital intervention is there, then you do it. My simple way of telling is, again, journey. When I was telling you about the patient journey, a cough and cold patient journey might be 2 days, 5 days, 6 days. Allergic rhinitis case might be 5 to 7 days. A cardio-diabeto might be 5 years. That is a journey where how it goes, what happens, various stages and all. But a customer journey, if you see, you need to see that journey, see whether you can fill it with digital and reduce that journey. You don't try to change the journey. with digital. It is not going to happen. No amount of digital can change the smile of a medical rep. No amount of digital can take away that one-to-one conversation importance. You just see the journey, put digital, reduce that journey. That is the best way of approaching anything.
No, I think another very important, the third or the fourth take-home message that you just hit on the head, nail on the head was, it is not compulsory to do digital for every brand. Because again, now I have seen, and there is a very typical and peculiar thing in pharma is because COVID forced us to go digital, now it is becoming a default behavior. So kuch to karna hai digital. It's becoming more of a pressure to do digital rather than need-based, right, Pawan? Brands may still work in the traditional Salesforce channel of building engagement with customers, continue doing that, right? And some may need a little bit of digital. So I think your point is very valid that all brands don't need digital. And secondly, all digital activities need not be done for one particular brand. I think that is the second very good message, because I think that's where the clarity should happen, because the younger generation, Gen Zers, I see when I talk to clients, there is a pressure on them to do digital. So the first question is the head, SBU head is asking, "Tumhara brand plan mein digital hai kya?" So what happens is he says, "Sir, ek to he may not understand. Second thing is if he understands, he's not able to apply whether my brand really needs digital. So he tries to do the tactical stuff. Like, sir, मैंने तो visual aid में डाल दिया है, iPad में डाल दिया है." So for him, that is digital, which is really not going to create that. So I think that, Pawan, I want to request you, I know you've done this a couple of times in the past, I guess, for the audience sake, I think if you can just clearly help define, and there is a difference between digitization, digitalization, and digital transformation, right? Converting the hard copy LBL into soft copy as your doctor friend, put a stick on your head and even on my kya tum log kar rahe ho types, is basically digitization, PDF ko convert karke. That is no transformation. So if you can just spend 1 minute on that for our audience, that would be really nice. Digitization, digital transformation, and digitalization. Yeah, all the three.
Technically, there's a word which is often misused and overused or even abused. Digitization and digitalization, there are two different functionalities. 10 years, 15 years back when computers started, in that time used to the concept of paperless office. That is digitization. Digitalization is your process which is being changed. Earlier you used to have a physical copies of orders and all. Now you get digital. You get physical copies of appointment letter or instructions or this thing. Today it is going digital with a digital signature and digital email, or even the emails becoming as an official document. So that is total digital transformation is the total business setup behavior change. So you are changing your physical visual aid to an iPad. It is not digitalization. It is just you have digitized your physical to a copy. Now, what is digitalization of this? Now, if you change a physical copy to an iPad, and then make that iPad in such a engaging content to the doctor instead of the same graph or this thing. And today, I think majority of the iPads you see, they put some graphs, they numbers, which is not even visible from 4 feet away. It's only the brand name which is big, it is visible. And traditionally, the physical visual aid used to get more time. Typically, if you see the human behavior, a medical rep going in and then opening up the visual aid, while that you can have a talk, while opening the visual aid, he's talking. But today, with all the iPads, people are standing outside with the first page open and suddenly come in and keep flipping the iPad. And then how much interaction is happening? What is the kind of interaction happening? God knows. I mean, I don't want to comment on that. There are many people who have done it well. I have seen some of the visual aids even in my company, and some of the visual aids in many other companies having a literal interactive case. So when you see the digital transformation, you need to understand as a brand manager first, what is to be digitized. Say you have a cough syrup. I always give this example. You have a cough syrup and you are promoting cough syrup is same. I mean, just except the brand name, it is again same guaifenesin or dextromethorphan or some combination which are around 150 different combination permutation. Everything is same. Now, once you put this, how we can engage? I always give this example. People don't understand the nature of the cough. If I'm coughing, if you ask a doctor, he knows by the way of cough, how you are coughing, he can identify what kind of a cough is it. Is it lung related, or is it just a throat irritation, or is it anything else? I mean, there are different forms of cough. If you ask the doctors, they will understand. So can you put a small QR code on the cough syrup bottle, and somebody scans it, and it takes to a landing page wherein just of a click of a button, you are engaging the patient to understand what kind of a cough.
No, I think
as perceived by many people, I'm not an advocate of digital. I am advocate of a right digital medium.
The right digital, yes.
Be sensible in using it.
Yeah, no, I completely get it. You're an advocate of where it is necessary. It's not required everywhere, but where you... And Pawan, at the end of the day, I think what matters is the word which is important in all this digital whatever is customer experience, right? At the end of the day, he should feel really engaged and he feels involved with your brand so that he's drawn into the brand. So that's the whole purpose, is to create that wonderful, seamless customer experience, just like Amazon does or like other people.
Absolutely.
Right. In fact, Pawan, I want to come to the last part of our conversation because I respect your time, another 5 to 7 minutes.
I would love to add here.
Please go ahead.
I always recall in terms, when you ask about, if you say you have an audience, a lot of brand manager audience.
Yes.
I remember one case reading in Google. Google had some 20-minute or 20% principal in their office, long time back. And that 20% was, in a whole day's 20% used to be the place where everyone in those certain departments or something like that used to sit and think of wacky ideas, random ideas, which doesn't exist. Gmail, Maps, your D drive, all these ideas had come from this 20% principle. You can read, Google mein shayad hai, you can check 20% principle of Google. So this was the idea where, I believe more of ideation and this thing rather than, doing 10 different things and then thinking, burn your finger and then think what is working, not working. And typical pharma mein aisa hai ki let some company start, then we will start. Even if you have a good idea, people will not start. Wait for some other company to do, let us do later. So that is a perception. So spend time in terms of thinking about customer insight. Spend time in terms of thinking about how a patient goes through the journey. A doctor goes through a whole day. So that is very important to understand for a brand manager. Once you understand, that is a beauty. Then a brand plan. A brand plan also, my definition of a brand plan is something, if the brand plan is done very well at the start of the year, financial year, you need not have to visit again and again.
Yes.
You have all the plan, but majority of the companies, what is happening after every review meeting, the boss is asking something, the head of the marketing saying something, brand manager is saying something else, and then something happens in between. Aap ye bhi kar lo, this also you do, that also you do. That means your brand plan was not done.
Yeah.
If interim things keep happening, that means your brand plan was not done. That is the understanding for me. Your brand plan, if it is fixed, that I remember in terms of shell cal we used to do not much of inputs and all. So once that is fixed, you need not revisit. You know what is to be done. Today, even this is a problem with acute, therapies. Chronic, many companies have a full year, but acute also has the problem of being seasonal products.
Yeah. And you'll be surprised, Pawan, there's one more finding which is very stark reality is brand planning or making of brand plans is considered once in a year annual activity, which runs in a cycle of 2 months to submit for approvals. Once that plan is made, it is shelved and kept away. But what's actually going on throughout the year is completely different. And that is why you see these differences of thinking and ideology, because you're not referred to the plan itself and not tracking its execution. So that's another finding that we always find. Pawan, it's been a phenomenal experience interacting with you, in this today's conversation, because I think you have one thing which strikes me hard is you come with not only a depth of experience across service, across brand planning, but also the fact that you have very, very deep grassroots level experience and you speak the language the customer understands. That's what I have learned today after interacting with you, because you have touched upon the very basics in this 45, 50 minutes conversation of agency briefing, the loopholes, Salesforce cycle meeting briefings, which look very, very ordinary tactical, but these are what are make or break situations for the brand. That what brand managers must understand. You also spoke about the importance of digital and why it is important and why you should do it or why you should not do it. My last question to you, Pawan, is today for this is what do you think is the state of our industry today? Pharma. How do you see it evolving? At least I don't want to say 3 to 4 years because we're living in a very uncertain time. At least in the next 6 months to 1 year, how do you see it evolving in terms of brand building or digitalization? Your areas which are close to your heart, and finally, any closing messages of wisdom or what young brand managers who are entering this profession should always adhere to? I thought of ending our conversation with that.
Okay, great. Though I'm not a wizard of anything, wisdom or anything, but I'll just share my experience. Coming to your first part of the question, how it is going to trend. Now, majority of in terms of digital, if you see, which is very, I'm seeing the trend. It is like SAP system, automated reporting system. How it invented. How it made an advent in pharma. Many companies rejected it at first. Many medical reps and associations rejected it. But forcefully, I think today 90%, 95% of all the companies are now digitized. So there is no physical reporting. So digital is also something which will hit it like this. So many companies are not accepting it right now, but sooner or later, some or the other way. Now, having said this, this also means that whether your brand is on Google, your Google indexing of your brand is very important, because I think there are two aspects on human behavior, whether it is a doctor or whether it is a patient or whether it is a chemist. Earlier, when we used to go to buy a car or a vehicle or anything, we used to search for somebody who has that vehicle and we used to take his opinion, kaisa hai gaadi, what is the mileage and all. Today, we don't do anything of these. We just Google it. We just take reviews. And it says that reviews, if there are one negative review, it gives a 5 times chance for a patient or a person to decide not to go for that. So reviews are something which is very important. Second, how well your brand reviews are there. If you are asking me only digital aspects in terms, whether your brands are Google indexed, that is most important. So because your brand, when it is there, so for example, earlier the brand launch mein hum kya karte the? I mean, typically we used to come, mal market mein gaya, then it goes to the stockist, then to chemist, and then make it available. Today, a brand manager, once he starts making, once the first batch comes, you need to ensure that you are giving it your presence to your content and positive content and right content to 1 mg, farm easy. Make it ensure that the doctor reads it somewhere through the emails or this thing. So this has become an additional requirement for any brand manager. So that is something which is going to help. Second, in terms of brand managers, I don't know how things will go haywire, but in next few years, with so much of patents or patent and new rules coming in, new government getting into this sampling restrictions and all. So you have to treat your medical reps with much more mature way. You can't treat him the way, nahi, maine jo bola, MR karega. No. Respect the medical reps more than you had done before, because they are the people who will take you further. They are the people who will today. The quality, today, the good old days are back, because your medical reps capability is going to build the brand. And what story you are giving them and what ease you are making them to give that story to the doctor and do it willingness with interest, that all depends on you. So it is where we see the brand manager's role is important. And for that, insight are more important rather than the data. It is not about the big data tomorrow, as internet and all says. In pharma, I feel it is about not about big data. It is about a bigger understanding of the market, bigger understanding of a customer. One size fits all may not work. It has to be region wise. A bigger brands might even need to think of having regional brand plans. Not only currently, I think most of the brands have one brand plan talking about their regional activities and all, but regional brand plans are required. So even every region has that capability to build a brand to 100 crores. So that is how. So many of the things will evolve. Many of the things we also need to learn. Many of the things in terms of digital will force us, even if we don't want to learn, but we'll be forced to learn about certain many things. So that is how I look at it.
And to end the conversation, I think at the end of the day, digital is habit forming, right?
Absolutely.
At the end of the day. In the early 2000s, we used to hail the taxi. Today, we have the taxi app on phone, and we are comfortable from the house to order, hail a taxi through Ola or Uber app. So it's all habit forming, and we, as marketers, need to ensure that habit forming is sustainable with our customers and patients.
Multiple things. In fact, the tune when I said that your brand should be on Google indexed, means Google में आना चाहिए. उसमें if I go further deeper, your objective as a brand manager should be कि Google के first search page में आना चाहिए.
Yes.
Because 95% of people don't go beyond the first page of Google search.
Exactly.
I mean, you take yourself, you are searching some word, you'll not go scroll down and go to the second page. Very rarely. You'll get everything in the first. So your brand to be on Google, one. Second objective, to be on the first page of the search.
Right.
What is that coding? What is that indexing? How well you put up keywords? All that is fascinating. So that is something which fascinates me. So that is how, it may not give you direct sales, but when some doctor is searching your molecule, your brand should come. When doctor is searching your brand, a good content should come. It should not be a negative content.
Right. And any final parting words of wisdom in terms of skills, what you mentioned, or what our brand managers should do? Like you spoke about, do the right agency briefing, do the sales force. Anything more tips you would like to sign off?
One final word. I mean, I'm not again, I'm saying even I am learning, even I am reading, I am learning from many of the young brand managers who come up with so good ideas. That is something which is very fascinating, which I keep challenging with some this thing. One word of advice: spend at least 1.5 hour a day in reading books. That's all. Rest all is taken care. Whichever you like, you read it. But 1 to 1.5 hour, ये मत बोलना कि time नहीं है, ये मत बोलना कि you read articles, you read HBR, you read any books of your choice. I'm not talking about novels, because somebody, I told this advice to somebody and he got hold of a Chetan Bhagat book. I'm not talking that. I'm talking about the latest business science or any economics or any business related books, at least 1 hour a day. Rest all will be taken care. You need not get any other advice or skills and all.
Spot on, Pawan. You are again one of all those esteemed guests who have left behind with this message of reading 1 to 1.5 hours a day. Please trust me when I say this. Even I tell client managers, because reading again has become very a scarce thing for many of the brand managers of today's generation. Not because they don't have the time, but because they stopped reading in their MBA days with Kokler. So you've got to read on the job, and I think that's a very good message. And thanks, because everyone has said that, and that is a thing which has to be imbibed. Pawan, it's been really very nice talking to you, very enlightening. Honestly, I love the early conversation with you because I knew this would turn out this way with the practical take-home messages. And honestly, I really feel that some of the messages, however discomforting, however blunt they are for the betterment of our audience. And I'm sure our audience will take it in the right way. That's for sure.
Absolutely. In fact, I am thankful that you have considered me, that I have a little worth of experience to be shared. Especially whatever I spoke, I have considered all my young friends, new joinees, MBA students, or freshers who are coming in the industry. So don't settle for being a mediocre brand manager. Keep reading, keep challenging yourself, and stop saying that itna bas hai. Stop doing that. This is enough. So keep challenging yourself. Don't expect a boss to challenge you.
Absolutely. I keep pushing you. So,
Typical meeting review always happens. The boss always asks, "Naya kya hai?" So before the boss asks, boss job is to ask, definitely, because his role is more into handling his 500, 600 people. He has his own headache. Before the boss asks what naya kya hai, the brand managers themselves should ask, humne kya naya kiya? So that itself answers a lot.
absolutely. Pawan, phenomenal. I really love the interaction. Once again, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing all your learnings, knowledge, insights, and also very nice way of giving the leave behind messages and learnings for our team. Thanks, Pawan. It's been wonderful interacting. I will look forward to staying connected with you always.
Thank you so much.
And thanks a lot, Pawan, once again on behalf of my organization, our audience, and me personally want to
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
for your time, Pawan.